So I'd like to invite our presenters on stage today, George, our Chief Experience Officer at CultureSuite, who's been working directly with on our accessibility project, and Pim from Accessibility Desk, who is our consultant on accessibility, and again, been working very closely with us. So yeah, I'll hand over to you guys. I'll let you guys kick off. If you need anything from me, just let me know.
All right, thanks, Matt. So hi, welcome to today's webinar. As Matt said, I'm a Chief Experience Officer here at CultureSuite. I work primarily with the UI and UX team, and I'm really looking to help try and connect our audience and our users to what we're doing in the roadmap and really joining that bridge. I think accessibility is quite close to my heart as well, so took it upon myself to try and champion that initiative here at CultureSuite. I'll pass to Pim.
Yeah. Hi there, I'm Pim. I'm one of the founders of Digitaal Toegankelijk, as we're called in Dutch, or Accessibility Desk, which is a bit easier to pronounce for George and Matt. And I'll try to give some background into the laws and regulations, which is an important topic here, but also just start at the basics. What is digital accessibility? Why are we talking about it? And so on and so forth.
Yes, so in today's webinar, we're hoping to cover some of the basics around what is accessibility, who does it affect, why is it important, as well as what is the new EU legislation and how it affects organizations, not just in Europe, but anywhere that serves Europe as well. I'd like to give a quick overview about what we're actually doing about that and how we're trying to improve things there, as well as some practical tips on what you can do about it in your organization to help improve accessibility as well. As well as some routes forward there and what support we're making available. And then if there's any questions, we can cover those. So without ado, I'll pass over to Pim, who can cover what is digital accessibility.
Yeah. Yeah, so just wanted to start with a question, I guess, to you guys. What percentage of people do you think live in the Netherlands with a permanent disability or a chronic illness? So that's a medical definition. I'm basing myself on the World Health Organization. Does anyone dare to give a number? We can share that in the chat. If not, perhaps in the meantime, if you are trying to find this at 20%, 7%, 65%, are we and 55%? Okay, I think we can. Okay, thanks. 40%, 60%. I think we can average all of that out. The official percentage, so that's if you ask the doctor, is 32.5%. In the Netherlands, living with a permanent disability. It's interesting, however, to realize that when people are born, around 5% of the people are born with a permanent disability. The rest of the disabilities that we're talking about occur during your life, which also means that the older you get and the older your target audience is, the higher this percentage will be. So if you think about people above 85, probably around 100% of them will have a permanent disability. Your eyes get worse, your cognitive abilities decrease, and you have less energy, basically. So it's this 32.5%, that's the average in the Netherlands, ages 16 to 65. So this doesn't even cover all of the pensionados that might be visiting your venues, basically. So I think if we talk about disability, of course, it's about this huge group of people that benefits a lot from accessibility. But we shouldn't only focus on this large group that needs it most, basically. So Usually when I do this, we're in an audience, but I'm going to pose you some situations basically, and I want you to go, just to realize for yourself, have I been in this situation? Just to try to make this group even bigger. So have you ever been in a situation where you couldn't understand the person next to you because the noise was too loud, you couldn't hear each other? Have you ever been unable to see your screen because the sun is too bright, or misclicked a button because you had gloves on? For all of the motorcyclists in the audience, very recognizable. Missed a traffic light if when the light turned green, or not being able to use your phones because you had bags in your hand. I can see hands, of course, but I'm assuming that most of you can identify with these topics. These we call situational disabilities. So in these situations, the disability doesn't come from having a certain body or mind, but it comes to how your environment or how your situation limits you. I travel a lot by train. I can't watch a lot of, I can't call in a stilte coupe, for example. That's a situational disability. And it's very funny to see that there are a lot of things happening in the digital sphere that try to solve these problems, not because they're important for people that are, for example, permanently deaf, but very nice to have for example, people that want to watch TikTok videos while still listen to their own music. I don't know how many of you are on TikTok a lot, or Instagram, but a large part of the videos there have captions. And that's not because TikTok cares deeply about digital accessibility for people with a permanent disability, but because it's simply nice for a lot of people. So you have permanent disabilities, which is already a huge group of people. Then you have situational disabilities, which can occur, but hopefully also just pass. I have a similar set of situations or life events, we can also call them, I'd like you to think over. So have you ever had an ear infection, which meant you were probably a bit deaf temporarily? Have you ever experienced a broken wrist or arm where you couldn't use your computer mouse or your keyboard in the meantime? Or did you ever need crutches after an incident? I'm on Hooikoorts, pollen medicine today because of the, and I can't drive a car, or I shouldn't drive a car today. That's not because of me, but because of the medicines, and that's a temporary disability. So hopefully this helps, that a lot of you already indicate, okay, we think a large group of people have a permanent disability. Yes, and that's very important. I think that's at the core of the group we're trying to help, but also realize that it might be very nice for everybody because it doesn't depend on the person, but depends on the situation if you experience a disability, and that everybody encounters temporal disabilities, just because, well, that's the hand that life deals you, I guess. So just to go over, if we're talking about disability, what is a disability? A lot of things came, we've crossed a lot of different types of disabilities. You can think about visual disabilities. Color blindness, for example, is a very important one. Imagine if you're red-green colorblind, and there isn't an orange light in between. That makes it very hard to distinguish traffic lights. Hearing disabilities, of course. Motor disabilities, which are often misinterpreted because there are a lot of physical disabilities like Parkinson or muscle aches or stuff like that that limit your use of your utensils, I guess. Cognitive disabilities, which are all about the mind and how you interpret the world and how fast, quickly, and well you can interact with it. Me myself, I'm cognitively disabled according to these definitions. I have ADHD and an autism spectrum disorder, which I always tell just to also show or explain I've never felt disabled. So being disabled isn't about identifying yourself as being disabled. I always thought that nu.nl was just an awful website. And only after digging into digital accessibility, I realized, okay, perhaps it's not all on me. Perhaps it's also something that nu.nl could consider, that all those flashing advertisements are just very bothersome and make it hard for some people to read their content. That's about the human part, I guess. So we do this for people with disabilities, people without disabilities. We do it for yourselves, of course, because making the stuff you work with more accessible also helps your life. But there are other benefits. So a large part of digital accessibility is about being able to let people use assistive technologies, for example, software that reads the content on a page or helps you navigate the page. Well, if assistive software can do that, so can Google, and so can ChatGPT, and so can all of these other forms of software that navigate or crawl your website and help people find and navigate to it. So it's also very good for commercializing, I guess, your website. As you might know, this Saturday, in 4 days, the European Accessibility Act kicks into action. The legislation isn't new; it's been here for 6 years, but we should have had 6 years to prepare for that. Instead, the Dutch government used 6 years to draft the legislation and only communicated it, I think, a couple of months ago. So it's all a bit new. It's funny to add, perhaps, that the urge for legislation didn't come from human rights or caring for people, as we often see in European legislation, but the goal is purely economical. It's about harmonizing accessibility standards across the European market to make it easier for yourselves, for example, to sell tickets abroad, to make sure that if you also have a German website, the German website doesn't have to comply with other standards than the Dutch one. So it's a very commercial package. The too long didn't read version of the European Accessibility Act is basically that you need to make sure that the service you provide, the experience you sell, in your case very often, you need to make it accessible from start, which might be the advertisement, through buying a ticket to the actual experience. So you don't only need to make your website accessible, you have to make sure that you consider accessibility every step of the way, like you probably do with security, for example. It's not an afterthought, it's every step of building a new portal that you consider, is it secure, is the privacy okay, stuff like that. We call that accessibility by design. You have to have the proper knowledge and expertise to do it, which means you understand the laws and regulations and you know what to do when. You have to have an accessible customer service, which means that you shouldn't only provide, for example, chat as a customer service channel, because if you are completely blind, it makes it a lot harder to communicate with you via chat than if you could also just pick up the phone and ring. And you have to be able to monitor and report on all of the above, which means you need to have policies and KPIs and need to have it in your management agenda somewhere. You need to have it in your vendor management. It kind of needs to be interwoven in your way of working, which means it's it's a lot, but there's also a lot to gain. So hopefully this kind of helps to understand not only for who we do it and what we mean by accessibility, but also what we are doing it for.
Yeah, so I think over the sort of past year or so, we've been looking at CultureSuite here. What can we do about this? How can we support the sector? And I think as part of that, we've started to try and look at. I think in the first instance is to try and get a sense of what do we need to do to be accessible? What are the standards there? So we've partnered with Pim and his team to actually get an audit of the entire platform, first and foremost, to get a sense of, we're in control of our platform, we're available there, what can we do about it? And we've also looked at actually what support can we also offer to help our users and the organizations we work with become more accessible and implement those practices. So I think in partnership with Pim, we've done a pilot audit, also in partnership with Wilmington Theatre. And I think Pim can explain a bit of the methodology about how we've done that in the next slide.
Yeah. So it's good to understand that there's kind of the way like you're set up with all of your clients. There's a technical part of a website, which is all about what happens in the background. And there's a content part, the videos, the pictures, the texts, all of the material that you provide yourselves. We've audited the entire platform, which is more than mandatory, I guess. Not only the part of the platform that all of your websites run on, but also the backend that you use yourselves. For Wilmington Theatre, it was our launching customer basically to also audit the content side of things. So are all of the used videos accessible? Is the text accessible? Are the color patterns accessible? And so on and so forth. We've provided an action list, or kind of a backlog, you could call it. And together with CultureSuite, for every point we indicated, is it something CultureSuite is going to fix, or is it something you should fix yourselves because it's about your content? And then we planned an evaluation meeting, basically, in which our specialists just ran through the most important parts of the report to make sure that everybody knew what to do next.
Yeah, I think from that initial report, it became clear there was definitely segments of things that needed to happen there. So I think when we talk about accessibility going forward, there's kind of 3 core segments we're looking at. I think the first is actually the platform itself that everyone uses day to day. Obviously, as part of the community, that's something that we take care of. It's something that gets updated every 3 weeks and is part of the roadmap. So any technical improvements, I'm pleased to say we've actually gone through the entire audit and we've got estimates and planning for every single improvement that is there. So all of those things have been put into our backlog, which I can talk a bit more about in a moment. And that is stuff that will be delivered to you continuously with every release going forward. There's then actually content improvements, so actually the words on the page, how you describe things and explain things to your users. So that's stuff that's very much in I guess, your control as our users. And likewise, there's the visual improvements there as well. So actually the design choices that are made, what colors are being used, is there sufficient contrast, etc. So I think that sort of first point for us is definitely stuff that I think we just need to get on with, and we will be working on. And I think there's some support available as well for yourselves in actually improving that content and putting processes in place that will help improve how the site looks and how the content is written, that I can also talk about a bit later in the presentation. I think in terms of some of the technical improvements that are happening, I think what we found is that from the audit overall, around half of the issues and challenges there that are available to improve are things that can be fixed with technical tweaks and new ideas and things that we're bringing through the roadmap. So as I say, we're already working on those. I think that's stuff that's just going to get delivered. as and when. I think if you keep an eye on the release notes, they should also be being highlighted there with every release of what's being improved. So we've already delivered our first few releases already. And I think in terms of going forward, a lot of these issues have been compiled into our project planning tool. So as I say, they've all been prioritized based on the severity from Pim and the team on how much we think this might affect audiences with disabilities. And we've also started to look at how that can tie into our current roadmap and where we can drop those items in neatly alongside other work, ensuring we deliver this as efficiently as possible. In terms of the issues that are there, there's definitely some things that are just quick wins that we'll be delivering straight away. And there are also some things that are perhaps part of bigger themes that we're also looking at how we can, I guess, not just meet the criteria, but go above and beyond potentially as well. So, you know, I think something that comes up a lot is alt text. We're looking at going above and beyond there in terms of looking at whatever technologies are available to help create alt text. We know our websites have a lot of imagery available. So we're looking at how things like AI can play a part potentially, helping to create and at least get a starting point for that alt text. But again, some of those ideas are perhaps a bit further away than others, and there are definitely some smaller improvements to alt text that we're already looking at. In terms of, I guess, those sort of core work streams, I think the immediate one that perhaps most of you will be familiar with is our websites, our marketing sites. So there's definitely a lot of quick wins we're bringing in there. There's already been some things delivered from us already around focus states and ordering there, drop downs, lots of common components that work across a lot of pages. We've already started to deliver some of those fixes. But there's also some items that touch on bigger themes. So as an example, things like events and productions, they span a lot of different pages, a lot of different parts. So in the background, we've also been looking at a refactor for a modernization project for the entire front end. So looking at more efficient and practical ways of updating the platform and creating and moving around these parts. So there's definitely some things here where lots of smaller little details are kind of amalgamated into perhaps a bigger solution. So we're actually looking at things like, for event instances, having a dedicated accessibility tagging system that we can actually use to group and sort different types of productions and events. As you can imagine, that's not necessarily a small improvement, but it definitely touches on a lot of places that we're needing to look at a new agenda filtering option for and things like that. So there's definitely sort of two work streams within the websites that we'll be looking through. And I think, again, there's definitely some smaller tweaks that we're already delivering. So simple things like video backgrounds, actually having a pause button there for anyone that perhaps doesn't like too much motion on the screen, or perhaps is quite easily distracted. So there's lots of small practical things we'll be delivering as well there. There's also the order flow. I think this might be its first unveiling, but in the background, we've also been looking at the order flow. We're actually in the process of creating a brand new order flow, looking to replicate a lot of the same functionality of the existing one, but really looking to make some UI and UX improvements there. There's definitely been a couple of items highlighted that we can improve on there from an accessibility perspective. So again, we're very, very early in this process. We've just completed our sort of first set of designs. There's actually a prototype being created that will be being shared with the community quite shortly. If that's something you're interested in, by the way, please reach out. I'd love to share it with you. But we're actually looking at rolling in a lot of the fixes there as well and improvements that we can make to that order flow. We're even looking at a completely new seat map experience, which again, we'll be looking to make accessible by default. So there's a lot of work happening there on that. I think the development team have just started their first meetings on how we want to deliver this. But I think we're all really, really excited here about that new look and feel order flow. I can share a lot more about that in the coming weeks. And then there's our dashboard itself. So some of the more eagle-eyed ones of you might have noticed that there's slowly some new look and feel items coming to the CMS itself. So again, we're looking at creating a new look and feel dashboard here as well. There's some basic bits and pieces here about actually just making the dashboard itself more accessible, more user-friendly. But we're also looking at actually what tooling can we give you to actually help make your lives easier and also make the website more accessible for audiences. So we've started our very first sort of foray into like where AI can play a part. Again, looking at more dedicated alt text fields and looking at just generally across the board where can we do things that are going to make that process and management a lot easier for yourselves. So I think very shortly we should be looking at a new media gallery, a new page builder, and from there that's going to unlock a lot more flexibility in the CMS going forward. So again, we're really excited about looking at what we can deliver there. I think there's been some, to give you some perhaps practical examples, I think I already mentioned the AI generated alt text, which is very early in its discussions, but we've also been looking at things like color contrast and how background colors actually affect things, and trying to, rather than wait for the audit to happen to find out something's not accessible, if we know what the color of the background is, can we actually flag that in the CMS and say, hey, are you aware that these colors might not be accessible? Do you want to think again? That kind of thing. So there's a lot of ideas there as well that we're looking into about how we can really put that into your process and actually into the way you manage the website, as well as actually after the fact, being able to highlight those issues and challenges there as well. So that's a bit about what we're doing. If there's any questions, I'd love to talk more about that. In terms of some practical things you can do about them, I think Pim's got some great tips that he can share with you around just small, simple steps that are really a great start to improve your website.
Yeah. So hopefully, you know, the at least that you're in this webinar already means that you're curious at the very least about this topic. It's very easy to start doing things. So I wanted to share just kind of top 3 or 4 low-hanging fruit kind of things that you can do. I'll also mention a couple of free toolings that you can just install in your browser, for example, are completely free of charge, but very easy to use to make your website more accessible. You'll get the slides later, so no worries about copy pasting any of it. If you want to focus within your content on 4 things you can do, I'd say, first of all, color, use of color. George already mentioned it. It's very easy to check. It's very easy to change. And it's very easy to do right, basically, because it's just about selecting the right combinations of color from your brand Bible to make it more accessible. A couple of slides from now, I'll share some tooling you can use for that. Second, content and headings. It's quite simple. If you see a heading structure visually, you also want it there technically, basically. So you want to use the right headings and the right content. You don't want to use bold or italics, schuingedrukte text, unless it's absolutely necessary. There's also tooling for that, free to check. I'll show it in a couple of slides. Alt text was already mentioned. Instead of going to talk to you about how to write the perfect alt text, which perhaps for some of your shows is very relevant, because you might also want to express some of the valuable cultural creative stuff going on in the picture. You might also want to describe that in a textual alternative to give the same message, but don't write alt text if your picture is decorative. So we often see the up and beyond kind of stretch where people give a textual alternative for everything. That's actually quite bothersome, because if you don't, for example, I don't use alt text in my use of pages, but I do skip a lot of the pictures because I don't really care about the pictures. I only want to know when the show starts, for example. If you cannot do that because it's there's a huge amount of text behind the picture, that's also a bit annoying. And make an accessibility statement. So you need to have a statement on your website that tells that you're working on accessibility, what you're doing about it, and where you can file a complaint. That's the go-to for people that depend on your accessibility to use your products and services. So just make sure that it's there. And if the honest story is we're just starting and we have a huge way to go, that's a better message than saying nothing at all. not only towards people with a disability, but also towards the supervisor or the legislator, who will probably just start with checking if people have a statement, because that tells them that an organization is working on their accessibility. While if there's no statement at all, the conclusion might also be, they're not aware, and that's a bad thing. So if we look towards some free tooling to use, there's some free tooling for color contrast. There's a link here. It's very easy. The nice thing about this tool is that it's easy to use, so you can use a pin drop. And on the bottom side, you can see it just shows with a very clear indicator if it passes or fails for certain accessibility criteria. So you don't have to, go through some content yourself to check, is this accessible, yes or no? No, you only have to pick the right colors, see if it's all green, and then go forward with it. As you can see, the gray text on the black background of this slide is accessible. For headings and textual alternatives, I would use Wave. Wave is free. It's very ugly, honestly, but it works. It does wonders. So you can install the plugin in your browser. You can click a button, and it shows up with all these errors and remarks, and you can filter that to show our headings. Headings is content. Content are textual alternatives missing, etc. So it's kind of another way to go through your web page. Very easy to use. There's a lot more to learn. Also a lot more tools. At Digitaal Toegankelijk, we actually didn't start as a social company. We started as a free knowledge sharing platform because we just found the subject quite important. There's still a free knowledge base on our website where you can read about what is mandatory, why, how you can test it, toolings you can use, and a lot of blogs and experience of people trying to fix it, for example. Yeah, you can start building some knowledge without having to follow trainings or do e-learnings or stuff like that. So as I told, there's a bit more to it than just making your front end accessible. You also have to make sure that every time you iterate on your products and services, that next iteration, the new content you supply, the next email campaign you start is accessible. So you have to make sure that in your process, in your, for example, content process, you have the right checks and balances in play. If you use this very simple checklist, I mean, you don't have to be a wizard, and probably there's a lot that's mandatory that you miss if you start with accessibility. But if you publish new content, make sure to always check color contrast, for which we just shared a free tool that just indicates if the colors you picked is right. Proper use of headings, which you can also easily check. Alt text means don't overdo it. Language settings, we see that going wrong quite often, that if you use quotes in English, for example, if you don't indicate that that quote's in English, it will probably sound like, well, perhaps even worse than my English. It might be Mark Rutte's English, which might be quite annoying, especially if you're, for example, a Fries theater, and you have a Friese website, or in Twente or Limburg or other regional accents or languages. If you don't set your language right, people with assistive software that let software read the page to them, well, that's very annoying, basically. And make sure you have a transcript for audio. On a higher level, all these criteria fit into a couple of boxes. So you need to make sure that your content is perceivable. That means can people find the information they need? Perceivable already shows that it's a lot about perceiving, so about seeing, hearing, feeling, about your senses. So it needs to be perceivable for everyone. Is it understandable? So if people can perceive it, can they understand it? If the website says it's Dutch, but the text actually Chinese, I probably can't understand it. Or if the order in which a website is read to me, if that's a different order than what I visually see, then that's very confusing and I can't understand it. And last but not least, is it operable? So can I operate a website? And the very easy way to check this is just see if you can navigate your website using your Tab key and your Enter key. If you can operate your website, then you're halfway through it, I guess. Don't forget, and this is kind of a nice extra, that people with a disability, well, it's not only in the digital space that matters. So about the accessibility statement, also the practical content. So making sure that you communicate if there is an accessible toilet, if there are special seats for people in wheelchairs, for example, and how you can reach them, and if you should book them, what the other options are that you provide. That's are all very valuable information. So there is George actually shared this with us from the UK, kind of best practice manual about how you should communicate about your venue, about your event, and about your organization on your website to make sure that people with a disability have all the information they need to just go there and enjoy what you organized for everyone. And you should add all of that to your statement. So I just mentioned it's mandatory to have such an accessibility statement. There are some mandatory steps in there, so you have to mention what you've done and what you're going to do about accessibility. You have to mention how people can file a complaint. You have to mention what people can do on your website, but you could also add information here about the accessibility of your venue, about accessibility of customer service, about other services or help you can provide just to make sure that people can go about and enjoy their experience without having to run into any unexpected problems.
Yeah. So I think in terms of, I guess, wrapping that up, I think we've also tried to put together some packages to help support you in this endeavor. So I think going forward, implementing those processes should ensure that actually your content going forward is always accessible. That said, I appreciate there's probably a lot of content and a lot of production is already there on your site. So I think in terms of looking at how we can help people move forward here, we've put together some packages that we're hoping can help support our users in the sector. So as I said earlier, all of the technical aspects of the platform, that's included in your license fee. We're going to be fixing those anyway. Typically, when you'd get an audit done, they would look at some of the technical issues, the content issues, and the design issues. So I think, again, one of the benefits and the power we have as the platform is we actually felt we didn't need to get the technical audit done for every single instance of our users' websites. We all share the same platform. So what we've been able to do is by working side by side with Pim and his team is actually look at perhaps a more community-friendly view of how we can do those audits. So all of these audits will include a WCAG audit. By default, they focus on the content and the design aspects, the things that are in your control to do. Obviously, any time we need to look at the technical aspects is added weight. So we've actually managed to put a big discount on these audits just by actually focusing on those areas alone. And all of these packages will include that as a minimum. So with that, you'll get an audit of some key pages, a sample of your website. You'll get access to an accessibility statement template that can help you structure and formulate that. And there's some sort of small consultancy there with one of the design team and one of the Peppered consultant team to actually, how can you make those changes in the platform to become more accessible? How can you change this content and tweak these parts to make it as accessible as possible? So we put together 3 packages really that do that. The first is the basic, which is the audit. It's access to the statement template, and there's some small consultancy sessions, 1 or 2 hours with the PC and design team here. We've then got the advanced package, which is a lot of the same, but actually if you've got quite a lot of content, or you've got quite a lot of colors, quite a lot of bold branding there, you might need a bit further support, perhaps some new design work, etc. So that adds on some more support time, but it also includes some consultancy time from Pim's team to help create the accessibility statement. Perhaps you're part of a quite complex organization, or there's differing bases to how you serve the public. And then there's the complete package, which is as the advanced package, but also includes that technical aspect to give you what is called an official WCAG M audit. And that's sort of the standard format that any auditor would provide. But obviously that includes all of the technical aspects as well. If there's any questions about those, I'd be more than happy to cover those after. We've also compiled some resources as well. So if you want to keep up to date with what we're doing about accessibility, there's our topic page. So very recently, in the sort of past month or so, the roadmap team have curated a set of topic pages covering some of the big areas we're looking at, whether it's AI, security, UX and design, or even accessibility. And that's some of our thinking, some of the work we're doing, and also opportunities for any ideas. It's also a great place to get inspired and bring us further ideas on anything you'd like to see around those topics. We're really keen to hear those. There's also a guide to alt text in the Peppered platform. Naturally, we've got a very large parts library, and depending on where and how alt text is used, and to Pim's point on when is appropriate to use alt text and when is it decorative and not actually alt text that's required, we've created a guide that covers that there. So there's a link in this presentation which we can share with you after today. And there's also some practical content advice. So there's also blogs that we put up that are just really simple, practical steps on how to make your content accessible, whether that's using really clear language for buttons, or the hierarchy of your headings and how you sort those, or even the reading age of the content that's on there. So there's a lot of support and basic tips we'll be looking to provide in the future alongside these audits as well. So I guess to wrap that up, in terms of the takeaways, I think things that you can be doing immediately is get on top of where you can improve your accessibility. I think an audit's a great way to do that. Have someone independent come in and actually objectively look at your website, your platform, and bring with it their experience and what can be done there. I think Pim and the team have been really great at sitting down with us and understanding both our product, but also the sector we're in. Create an accessibility statement, whether you've managed to get to an audit yet or not, or whether you've gone through the audit and created a million recommendations, is actually get that statement on your website. Again, that's something we can support you with alongside the audits. Ensure that practical accessibility information is available. Again, I don't like to look at accessibility as ticking the boxes or focusing solely on the WCAG criteria. Actually give your audience practical information and look at great moments where you can drop that in the booking journey. Again, make sure it's all available easily, but also make sure that where there's opportunities to explain certain performances might be suitable or less suitable, that kind of information is really key. Create processes that encourage accessibility as part of your workflow. So we've actually got a webinar following up this one with Wilming Theatre about their experience in, I guess, going through this audit in the process, and I guess going forward, the things that they're actually doing to tackle that. As you can imagine, some of the criteria is sometimes a bit of a grey area. Obviously, all these improvements don't happen overnight. There's a lot of functionality, a lot of content, a lot of productions going live. So again, looking at how you can bake that into the process so that it's not this overwhelming amount, and actually just the small little details each day can really help you there. And also follow our release notes. So again, we are looking to push accessibility improvements with every release, and they will be coming hopefully thick and fast as the product develops. But yeah, we'll be shouting about all of those in each release. So yeah, thank you. I guess I'd like to open up for if there's any questions.
Thanks for that, George. We do have some questions coming in, which we've got one from Anne. Please, anyone else drop in any questions. You can also come in on stage and chat to us directly. Feel free to come on and make it interactive. Before we go on to those, I just want to make people aware that we did, Pim and George shared quite a few links in there. I tried to share what we can, but please check out the handouts tab in the top right hand corner where you can download the presentation, because from there you'll be able to access all the links that you need and just go back over the presentation as and when you need it. I also left a poll to ask if anyone's interested in the accessibility practice that George shared. This will allow our team to just get in touch with you directly to just check in with you guys on that. Alternatively, you can get in touch with us the usual way by creating a ticket in the service portal to register your interest. So either way works for us. So just carrying on to, we just have one question so far. Anyone else, feel free to drop in. But a question from Anne asking, in April, we seem to embark on, we had a meeting about the audit. I guess that's one for us to check in with the CS team.
Yeah, it's ridiculously good timing, Anne. I've just seen a message pop up from Dana over at Digitalto Handclick that the report has actually just been completed whilst the webinar was going on. So your ears must have been burning. We'll review that report. I'll speak to the CS team after this call, and we'll get a meeting set up to present the findings of that with you as soon as possible.
Cool, brilliant. Yeah, really timely, that one.
It's ridiculously timely. It's quite scary, actually.
Does anyone else have any other questions for George and Pim? While anyone might have just be thinking up questions, I will also reiterate what George mentioned, that next week, I think most of you might have registered already, but if you haven't, we also have another follow-up to this webinar where we'll be talking directly to the Wilming team about how they kind of worked with us and the audit process and how it worked with them. So it'll be kind of like a very practical kind of case study, real world look at how the kind of accessibility audit and implementation process looked when you're working with us on that. So I think that would be a really interesting one to go through. So I don't think we have any more questions, it seems, coming in. But as always, feel free to get in touch with our customer service team if you need any help at all. They'll always be on hand to answer any queries. But if not, you'll be getting a recording of this sent to you guys directly via email shortly to kind of go over the materials the team went through today. Other than that, thanks for that, George and Pim. That was really insightful. But until then, we'll see you again next week.